Welcome to the Coolest People I Know podcast. My name is Doug, and today, as one of our guests, we have a special surprise. It is one of the coolest people I know. His name is Dan Desrosiers. Dan and I go way back. You're going to hear some of our story and how we met inside of the podcast today. But Dan works at a church outside of Philadelphia, a very rapidly growing church, and has a strong heart for bringing data to the church and how we manage that kind of data, how we love and we serve people with data. Super important stuff. And I'm hoping that you're going to stick with us because Dan is awesome and you're going to get to hear lots and lots of stories today. Stay with us. This is the Coolest People I Know podcast, and I literally have one of the coolest people I know on the face of planet Earth. Dan Desrosiers and I go way back, back to the fabled 2000s, back to the days where, Dan, I remember this so vividly, literally giving you your college tour of the University of Valley Forge at the time.
I remember your haircut.
Oh, oh, back when I had hair. What great days they were.
No, I definitely remember that day. It was in April of 2001.
Wow, that is impressive that you remember the month too. That's scary. I remember sitting at the table and in a classic I'm going to put my foot in the mouth moment, being like, "Oh, your name is French, Desrosiers. What? That's beautiful. Where's your family from?" And you're just like, "It's Desrosiers, and we're from, New England."
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Yeah. Massachusetts really is the France of the United States.
More or less.
More or less, okay. Well, Dan serves as the executive pastor at Connections Church in Pottstown, PA. It's a congregation you helped plant, you helped start back in, what, 2005?
Yep.
Okay, so y'all are hitting 20 years this year.
September 18th will be 20 years of our church. It's hard to believe.
That is fantastic. And I remember that getting started and just seeing this little effort grow into a behemoth of good for the community there is so awesome. So Dan, welcome to the Coolest People I Know podcast. We always start with the same question. Who are you?
Well, I wish I could answer that question, Doug. I recently, in the last couple of months, I've really had some serious existential moments of trying to answer that question because, for my whole life, I've always had a wide variety of interests. And so it's very difficult for me to say oh, this is my thing. Because I just like a lot of stuff. Even and it follows me everywhere I go. I'm a musician, so I play instruments and I help to lead worship at our church. And even when we first met, I had a tuba in the back seat of my sister's car that I borrowed to
Right.
go there. So I auditioned for a music scholarship on tuba, was kind of coming out of high school primarily as a drummer, and then kind of started off my college career on bass, and then eventually electric guitar, and then played a couple of other brass instruments along the way. But it just that's me in a nutshell. It's just I love to do all the things and help in a lot of ways. So it was that way in media. I've been a media professional for a long time. And so I take a multidisciplinary approach. So I'll do video production, audio production, graphic design, those kinds of things. I do a lot of other types of production on a freelance basis. So I'll produce concerts and conferences and those kind of things in kind of going between AVL integrators or unions and different providers and kind of helping to make an event happen. I also roast coffee. I've been roasting coffee since 2008 at my house. Not continuously. I do take breaks to sleep and stuff. But I love cooking and creativity in the kitchen and those kind of things. I also just love figuring out the essence of something. So I've been on this quest to perfect bagel making, and so I do. It's fun, and it's a process. But yeah, I'm just kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of guy in every area that motivates me in my life. I also uh, happen to be an executive pastor doing organizational strategy and leading our staff and just having fun for the cause of Jesus.
So is it that you basically take all of these things? When is it that you do find sleep?
Well, you know what it really is I've discovered there was maybe it was about 10 years ago I was convicted that I didn't have any hobbies. I didn't do anything for leisure. Everything that I do ends up turning into a business. And so I decided I wanted to, this was prior to kind of the drone revolution. I decided I wanted to build like quadcopters and hexacopters. In fact, I think I flew one when you were at my house uh many, probably over 10 years ago,
Yes, that's right.
and I got it stuck in the tree.
Yes.
Did not go well. Um, yeah, so I just like to do lots of stuff, and stuff ends up for some reason turning sort of into businesses for me. And so kind of like a in that way a serial entrepreneur, but nothing that anyone's ever heard of. I just do stuff, man.
What do you think drives that sense in you? I think a lot of folks, especially nowadays, everyone's got the main gig and the side hustle, or, they've got 3 to 4 irons in the fire, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Frankly, knowing you for as long as I've known you, you've turned each one of those into at least a mild success. Like you said, like no one's ever heard of me, quote unquote, but the people that you help in all of these different areas, it goes a long way. So, like, what kind of drives that sense of multi-potential, multifaceted, um, I guess, business strategy or business execution on your end?
Yeah, I'll go back to music analogy. When I was 12 years old, I was just starting to learn music, and our we were just part of a church plant. We were starting to plant a church in my hometown, and we didn't really have any musicians for our youth group. And my mom's cousin had an electric guitar that he let me borrow, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I could learn that to help." And so that really, I think, is my driving motivation is really to help, to be a help. And, going back to music, like I know I'll never be picked first for any of the instruments that I play, but and you are one of them. I've played with brilliant musicians and people that are masters of their craft. I'm not one of them, but man, if the keyboardist doesn't show up, I can fill in. If there's a need for something else in that environment, I can move around just to be helpful. And that's been the case. I mean, here's the truth. In my professional life, I started my career in the classroom. I was a media specialist and a faculty member at University of Valley Forge. This year is my 20th anniversary there. I never left. I'm currently teaching a
Wow.
class, and I teach another one in the fall. Um, I really never left Assemblies of God World Missions. After we left Valley Forge, we became missionaries. I've been a contract 1099 employee of Assemblies of God World Missions since I left in 2019, doing multiple projects a year for them. And it's I don't know why that is, but it's just I want to continue to be helpful, and operate in the gifts that I know that God's given me.
Hmm, that's amazing. With all of those things going on right now, what is it that you're currently leaning into? What is it that you're building? Where are you kind of focusing your energy nowadays?
Yeah, so during the day, you had mentioned it, but our church is really growing immensely over the last number of years post-COVID. It's been remarkable just how our church is growing. And so I am trying to lean into that strategy. And honestly, we're not employing any church growth strategies. I want to be clear. We're doing worship, we're preaching the word. People are getting back, they're finding Jesus, they're getting baptized, and they're sticking around. I mean, that's the reality. However, for us, we're very space constrained, and just like any church, we're resource constrained at times. And so, I'm trying to figure out the strategy of how do we manage this? How do we steward all of this in the best possible way? And, for us, it means staffing things, it means real estate things, it means programming things. Um, and so that's what's consuming my brain on the day-to-day basis. And now, just even in the last month, I've been consumed with this idea of like, man, if I'm dealing with some of these things and I'm trying to make data-driven strategy decisions, how many other people, how many other pastors, executive pastors, churches are out there who also need to make decisions whether they're growing or not, whether they've plateaued, whether they're like, I don't know if this thing is going to last for 3 months. What can we do by looking at the data that churches are already tracking to infer trends and to see what's actually going on under the hood? Because it may not be as bad as you think, but it also may be worse than you think on some levels. But I just love, I think it's, I don't know that all creatives are as analytical as me. A lot of creatives are feelers, and I have feelings too, Doug. But I'm also very analytical. So if someone says, "Oh, it felt like we had a big attendance this week," and I can go back and I look at the data and analyze it and say, "Oh, well, it felt that way, but numerically, it was a completely average Sunday." Okay, what made it feel that way? Those kinds of things. So, yeah, I'm really thinking about that a lot and thinking about how data can drive strategy without becoming an idol
Mm,
to a pastor or to churches. Like, we track attendance. I think a lot of people in my chair would want to say, well, it's not about the numbers, and it's not about the numbers, except for the fact that every one of them represents a soul.
mm.
And so that's the type of thing that I can add to the equation to be able to think about these things and really like stewardship and strategy to try to drive some of these things forward to be as effective as we can be in my industry, in this case, for the sake of the gospel.
Mm. That is incredible. And I think it's something that is desperately needed in the church. I am terribly curious, mostly because I have no idea how you would implement something like this in a meaningful way. So I'm terribly curious in what that looks like implementation wise in your environment. Recognizing how big is Connections Church at this point?
We're running about 1,300
Okay.
weekly.
Okay. So I mean, at that point, you're in the top, what is it? At maximum 5% of churches, probably
Sure.
closer to 3. So you're in like the large church sense. What does that look like for your implementation on the week to week?
Yeah, so one thing that I do that I recently learned is sort of a novel thing is I produce a metrics report that we give to our key stakeholders. So we give it to our staff, we give it to our elder team monthly, and it's a visual readout of where we currently stand. So it has some bar graphs. It's kind of built in a off of a spreadsheet component, but it's a visualization of the data. So at a glance, you can look and see, okay, what were our averages this month? Everything from giving to our kids and youth ministries to our in-person and online metrics. How does this stack up to where we were a year ago? How does this stack up to where we are in our average of the trailing 12 months? And then what does it look like week to week? And we can follow the trends. And so then at times when we're trying to make a decision, I'll take that information and I'll start to do a little bit of predictive analysis and look forward and say, okay, well, what are we going to expect this fall? Like I mentioned, we're space constrained. We're running about 250 kids on a Sunday morning, and well, you only have so much classroom space, and you can only have so many kids in one room legally, as well as safety wise, and with the volunteers that you have and those kind of things. So we're always looking at that data to try to figure out, all right, well, what changes do we need to make? And it's just funny, like I have these feeling versus empirical data conversations
Yeah.
all the time. Like, oh, we have one big Sunday, and it's like, oh, well, we gotta split the pre-K. Okay, well, let's look at where we're at. Okay, this was a historically high and an abnormally high week. We shouldn't hit this level again until late October. So we've got a little bit of runway. Or we're looking at it, it's like, okay, yeah, we've been trending, whereas the church has been trending 15% higher year over year. This particular classroom is trending 40% higher year over year. We've got to make a change immediately.
Mm, mm,
So it's always trying to poke at it and look at different things for us. And then we're looking at potential real estate decisions and those kind of things. Well, what's giving like? What could we raise in a capital campaign? How do we stack up per capita giving per person? Like, is it high? Is it low? Are we okay? What could we actually do? So I don't know. I love digging into that stuff, Doug. It really feel like it's something that I can do to look at the problem through different lenses and try to figure out how we can best serve our people and serve our community.
mm. That's incredible. And I love that you brought out kind of using that to guide the decisions around that because you're right. In a lot of ways, like you mentioned, creatives kind of feeling like more of a feeling kind of job than a more analytical thing. I'm with you. I would consider myself a creative, but I'm extremely numbers based, like analytics, like let's figure out exactly what this needs to look like in order to make that happen. You talked a lot about, kind of the importance behind this, about like the idea of making sure you utilizing resources properly, that you're stewarding those resources well. How do you talk with somebody who is more on that feeling side of things and, kind of like how do you help people move from that idea that we can't just base these decisions on vibes, and
Yeah.
especially in the church where we don't have necessarily a lot of processes that guide these kind of data driven decisions like typically. So how do you move somebody from vibes to data based decision making?
I'd love to ask you that same question because yeah, I don't know. I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but I think there's probably a lot of anxiety among pastors and church leaders around who's with us. Like, who is actually with us? And I ask that question all the time, uh, just to the air. How do we know? How do we know who's with us? And when you count heads and when you count offering, that doesn't get you any closer to knowing who's with us. So there's one piece of it that's like, okay, we need to get better at understanding that. But on the other side, I do think there are group dynamics at play where we can actually start to see trends when we pull certain levers or when we look at things that can maybe take some of that anxiety away from not knowing, right? I mean, if you're in a church of 50 or 60 and one family doesn't show up, a family of five doesn't show up, that's 10%
Mhm.
of your attendance that disappears. And now you're like, oh, and you look at that on a spreadsheet and you see a 10% dip year over year, you start to get a little nervous about that. Like, oh no, what's happening? Oh, the Smiths were on vacation. Whew. Okay, right? But I think there is some anxiety over not knowing. And I deeply want to help encourage pastors that they can know, and that it's just because something is strategy driven doesn't mean it's not spirit led,
Hmm.
and so we don't have to just feel the vibes. We can actually look at some of this stuff again, not making it an idol, not trying to um, really just make an emphasis on the numbers where it shouldn't be, but to actually get a sense of like, just take giving, for example. If your year over year giving is way down, or and your attendance has stayed the same, so your per capita giving is going down, well, what levers can we pull? Maybe it's time to do a generosity um, generosity sermon series. Maybe it's time to run Financial Peace University. Like, what are some things that we can do to help move the needle and help our people? And I'm not talking about getting on the stage and telling people, you all need to tithe and you need to do like, no, what can we do uniquely from our role, not from a we need your money perspective, but from a we want to make disciples perspective and
Hmm.
just see what the Lord does. But if you don't know, you would never know that that was a need in your church to do something like that.
Hmm. Wow, that's fantastic. I feel I felt it so deeply when you said that a lot of pastors and leaders have anxiety
Mm.
around those kind of things because I initially I think my reaction was I don't have anxiety. You can't tell me that. But then the sense of like, yeah, when 10% of your people don't show up in a smaller congregation, that feel I mean, I guess in any congregation that feels
Sure.
quite large.
Yeah,
Um,
10%. Yeah.
yeah, 10% is big. I would imagine bigger for you. Um, you're in a church of 1,300. I'm in a church of around 30. What kind of things can I start doing today to mark some meaningful metrics to try and figure out data wise where in the world we go from here?
Yeah. Well, I think it doesn't matter what you measure as long as you're measuring it consistently. So when you choose metrics, we did this over the pandemic, right? When everybody talk about online views, all of a sudden, a church of 400, oh, we're reaching 10,000 people. Look at us, and it's like, oh, because you're counting 3-second views and you're doing a 1.8 multiplier on your numbers and whatever, all those crazy things that we did back then. Um, we decided back then to take a very conservative approach. And starting in 2020, we tracked peak concurrent views. That's it. We didn't track any other numbers on any other platforms. Peak concurrent views. Um, does that give us the most accurate number as to how many people we're reaching? Well, no, we're not actually trying to determine how many people we're reaching. We're trying to determine trends. How are we doing? So, regardless of what you're choosing to measure, if you just measure it consistently, you can really get that sense of how we're doing. And then as you pull some levers, as you make some changes, whatever that might be, a community outreach, a whatever it is, you can start to see meaningfully, okay, oh, over the last second week of October, for the last 3 years, we've averaged this, 30 people, let's say. And yet, well, we were 22 and then we were 28 and now we're 32. So we've been growing, 10% a year or whatever that is, um, moving into the future. Well, then this year we decided to do an outreach on the Saturday before the second Sunday in October, and we gave out food bags, or we did haircuts, or whatever it was. And all of a sudden, that trend, the second week of October, we're now not up 10%. We were up 33%. We had whatever that is. We had 40 something people on that day. Well, we can attribute that directly because it deviates from the trend. We can now see, oh, we did this thing and look what happened that day. The other thing I would say is, for a church of 30, completing your profiles to understand the people that are with you and understanding their demographic and understanding what drives them, and helping them to get engaged in biblical community in a way that's unique to your neighborhood. Because it's not going to, I mean, it doesn't scale exactly down, or even from Chester County, PA to where you are near Pittsburgh. Like it's, they're very different and very different, even across the river from where I sit right now is a very different thing. So really being able to understand your people, and then understanding the group dynamics by measuring consistently.
Hmm. So good. I appreciate you sharing that. So I want to talk for hours on end about data, and because all of this is so fascinating, and again, your mind around this kind of stuff is just incredible. As we look to move on in our podcast, we always, as our fourth question, do a question from a hat, and actually, technically, it's a question from a wheel.
That's
We have
incredible.
this large spinny wheel here with a bunch of scary questions. Dan, are you ready for me to spin?
I don't know. I think I'm ready.
Okay, well, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to do it anyway. So these are like some light questions all the way up through some like ridiculously heavy ones. I always hope it's a good one for us to talk
I'm
about,
the
but
worst at these types of questions.
oh, what's a lie you believed for way too long?
That you can only be a Christian if you listen to Christian music.
No, I said a lie. No. No, tell me about that because a lot of people would imagine that a statement like that would be heretical.
That's the way I was raised. I was raised that we only listen to Christian music. And imagine what it's like. Imagine what it would be like, Doug, if you were a musician with no good musical influences.
Mm,
You're looking at them. I did not. I have no musical influences that I'm aware of. I'm not a good musician in that sense. I don't listen to music very much, and I was told for my whole upbringing that you have to listen to Christian music, and there was some good stuff back in the day. But I do not raise my kids in the same vein, and I do. There's a lot of value there, um, but I think we put a lot of emphasis on Christian music, and um, there's been a lot of pretty shocking things that have come out of contemporary Christian music just even in the last couple of months.
uh-huh.
And my parents were at my house when which my mom, God bless her, I love my mom. I love my parents. They're the best parents you could ask for. But my mom talks about Jelly Roll like he's Billy Graham because because he sang a song with Brandon Lake.
Yes, yes.
And when the most recent bombshell dropped about the Newsboys, I my parents were at my house and I told my dad, I said, "Hey, Dad, this is why I." And my parents went on the K-Love cruise this year, like they're all in. I said, "This is why I don't let Christian performers determine my theology or doctrine."
Mm,
Because they will fail us. And I do think there are some absolute gems, the Phil Wickhams of the world, the Stephen Curtis Chapmans of the world, Michael W. Smith. Like there are some gems that are out there. Nothing against anybody else, but they're all humans. They're gonna fail you, and likewise, there are a lot of just super kind, like for example, Brad Paisley. I would have never been exposed to Brad Paisley, who is a believer and a follower of Jesus, but who also is a brilliant songwriter in so many ways and a unbelievable musician. And slight regret not being exposed to him earlier on in my life. My daughter's name
that's
is Paisley, not necessarily named after him,
yeah.
but
You named your daughter after Brad Paisley, even though you hadn't listened to his music. That's bold, very bold.
don't tell my parents.
Yeah. So, quick follow up on that. Caleb has a cruise.
Oh yeah. K-Love has a cruise. They take up an entire this year I think it was a Carnival ship. Next year it's not going to be, but it's all they do concerts, they do meet and greets, breakouts. It's the entire ship is all people there to that are connected with K-Love. So like my parents said the best they had Crowder on the ship. They loved it, but it's all like even going back, they had some like quartets that were on the country music, vocal quartets all the way up to Crowder, and they loved it.
How did you make that jump from believing the lie to now believing what you do believe?
That's a great question because my sister was always the more rebellious one in our family, and she would sneak secular radio and listening to all different kinds of things. And I would never dream of doing that. And yet now I would say, well, I don't blame her. Um, and I would say um, I think it had to make a turn for me to see music as art and expression versus only a reflection of our theology or doctrine.
Mhm.
Um, you can believe other. Now, I'd also believe in like guarding your heart and not like I don't want to listen to explicit things. I don't want my girls, my three young girls, I don't want them listening to things that teach them things that are contrary to our belief system. But there's also a whole lot of great stuff out there that can inform musicianship as well as just edify yourself just because it's a creation and a creative outlet.
Hmm. Well said.
Thanks. I don't know if I
You're
believe
right.
it or not.
It's definitely one of the things I think we were taught, growing up in the fabled 1900s. And
Yes. Year of our Lord, 1990.
back in the day, our TVs were square. Um, yeah, it's definitely one of those things. So I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, our last question, Dan. We always ask, what's one question that no one has asked you that you wish that they would?
When part of our career, part of my career was not great. We worked at kind of a toxic sort of place. Um, and I wouldn't say we left with a lot of trauma, but I do think coming out of a season where our working conditions were less than ideal, it would have been nice to have like an exit interview or somebody that kind of asked what what it was like. And we were living overseas at the time, and man, there were just some really, really challenging times. Personally, it was the hardest time that Alicia and I have ever had in our marriage. Um, and I don't know that we've ever had the ability to really unpack some of that trauma, some of the pain, um, with people who were equipped and able to actually do something with that. So sorry to make that really heavy, but it's the only thing I could think of in the moment.
No, that's interesting that you went there. It's interesting when we go. It's been a jovial conversation so far, and like this kind of thing, this kind of question, I think brings out that sense of like the heaviness that we carry.
Yeah.
Like I will say in your like pre-interview documentation, you said like what would you actually do for a Klondike bar, and I'm just like that's interesting because every single person we've talked to so far kind of makes that jump.
Hmm.
And so I guess what has helped you get to the point where you are today, recognizing you still carry some of that. Um, I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of us carry the trauma of those toxic relationships, toxic workplaces, toxic whatever that we've been through. We carry that with us, even as healed as we may be. I guess what got you to the place you are today that got you past that?
So I'll go back to some of the first parts of our conversation. You know what's helped me? Helping others.
Hmm.
That's what's helped me. my wife and I have had conversations with nearly a dozen people or couples that have walked through the same or similar circumstances as us. Just in 2 months ago, I had a conversation with a guy that I met back then. And I said to him, "Hey, bro, I feel like we were both the worst versions of ourselves when we met back then."
Hmm.
And he said, "I'm still in therapy from what happened then." And I've had, yeah, I said a dozen, I don't know. To me, it seems countless conversations with people to help validate them, to say, I know you feel like it's you, it's not you, to help them put language to what they're dealing with, and then ultimately to rejoice with them when they come out the other side and re-emerge with new purpose and thrive. Another one of the people that I spoke with, I did recently run into, and she's absolutely thriving and is loved and valued and wanted and appreciated right where she is. And that was in the wake of 3 years ago, right around the same time when we met. And we cried together and we prayed together. And so I do think, I mean, this same thing. When I was in high school, I went through a rough time in my life, a family kind of tragedy, crisis. And my first thought when it was unfolding was, oh, now I'm going to be able to relate to more of my friends who have also walked through this thing. So, I'm not saying that as a badge of honor. I'm just saying like helping others really does help me. And it really is something that drives me. And so when I look at things that haven't gone as well as I hoped they would go, it is nice to be able to leverage that and utilize those experiences to help lift others up.
Well said. So, and I'm grateful that you're healing up from all of that. So,
Thank you.
Dan, this whole entire time is about the coolest people I know, and you're definitely in the top, man. Thank you so much for sharing today. Thank you for your time. Where can people find you online? Where they can they connect with you?
Probably the best place would be I'm on Instagram. I'm more of a lurker than a poster, but it's just at Dan Desrosiers, Desrosiers.
Awesome. Dan, thank you for sharing today. We look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Thank you, Doug.